Hello and welcome to the program. I am Imoni Amarere. Wednesday, September 1, 2021 was the date set by the governors of the 17 southern states of Nigeria for the effective takeoff of an anti-open grazing law in each of their states. The governors had resolved at their May 11 meeting in Asaba, Delta State, and reinforced at their July 5 meeting in Lagos that open grazing should be outlawed in all the states of the South. But as at the deadline on September 1st, only a handful of the states had complied with the Governors Forum's resolution. They include Abia, Bayelsa, Ekiti, Oyo, Ondo, and Rivers states. In Ogun, Osun, and Enugu states, the bills have been passed by the Houses of Assembly awaiting assent by the state governors. In Delta and Akwa Ibom states, the bill is still in various stages of consideration in the Houses of Assembly. 6 other states, Anambra, Lagos, Edo, Cross River, Ebonyi, and Imo, appear to have either ignored the agreement or are foot-dragging. They are yet to commence the process of enacting the law. The expectation was that by September 1, it would have been unlawful for anybody or group of persons to carry out open grazing in any part of the southern states of Nigeria, with the appropriate laws in place. But even as this process was ongoing, the federal government last week set up a committee to review 368 grazing routes and sites across 25 states in the country. The committee is charged with determining the levels of encroachment, map out and recover old grazing reserves. This has brought into focus the legitimacy or otherwise of the Land Use Act, which vests the authority and control of land in state governors. While governors of the southern states insist on the ban, Miyetti Allah Kota Hore, the socio-cultural group that speaks for the cattle breeders and herders, has categorically stated that it will not obey the anti-grazing laws so enacted. It describes the laws as satanic and the policy as dead on arrival, considering that the federal government has already initiated moves to revive grazing routes across the country. The group insists that a similar law enacted in Benue State earlier has not brought about the desired peace, neither will the ones being put in place now by the southern states. Some analysts have wondered if Nigeria is still operating a constitutional democracy. Right, so these are issues that are on the table, and there are quite a number of questions that we need to be asked and find answers. So, for instance, some analysts ask, how can a socio-cultural group threaten to dishonor a law validly enacted by state legislatures? If, as lawyers have said, the anti-grazing policy of the southern states is immutable because it now has the backing of the law, how can anyone threaten to defy it without consequences? Besides, why does it appear that the federal authorities are encouraging or at least tolerating this apparent resort to lawlessness? Now, what options are open to the southern states to enforce their laws, given that the police is an agent of the federal government? Questions and more questions. Join us when we return from this break as we'll meet our guest analysts who are already here in the studio and who are also joining us virtually. Stay with us. All right, time to meet our guest analysts who are right here in the studio and who are also joining us virtually via Zoom. First, from my immediate left is Barrister Ahmed Mewada. He's a legal practitioner based here in the nation's capital. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
We're also joined by Professor Charles Nwekaku. Professor Nwekaku is of the Department of Administration at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
And we're joined virtually from Akure in Ondo State by Barrister Shola Ebisheni. Barrister Ebisheni, former commissioner in Ondo State and currently the Secretary General of Afenifere, a socio-cultural group. Let us quickly also mention here that we did invite Baba Usman, who is a representative of Miyeti Allah, but unfortunately, he's unable to join us at this point. We hope that somewhere along the line, he will be able to join us right here in the studio to deal with these issues. Well, we expect Barrister Shola Ebishemi to join us virtually any moment now, too. Thank you so much. Well, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
So, Barrister Ahmed, we broached this issue some months back. That was in May when the governors first met in Asaba.
Yes.
And at that time, we were looking at the feasibility or otherwise of these laws being enacted.
Yeah.
Now, some of the states have enacted those laws.
Yes.
So, what's on ground now is the fact that the states have gone ahead to enact the laws, and some of the stakeholders that will be affected by that law are saying we will not honor that law. First, what's your take on, because at that time we were speculating whether or not the states would actually proceed beyond pronouncements to enacting this law. Now they have enacted those laws.
Yeah. In all honesty, I think we should be jubilating. Because last time we were here, the polity was so heated that we were thinking that people would start carrying arms, going after each other's jugulars. But then we thank God that the voices of reason had actually appealed to either parties or both parties. The federal government is no longer, biting the bait, that is being dangled, or the carrot that's being dangled, and so on and so forth. If you remember the last time, the federal government was reacting to the governors. But this time around,
the Attorney General and Minister of Justice,
and then Shehu Garba, the presidential media aide or whatever. Yeah. So, but this time around, it's more mature the way I am seeing it. This is democracy in action, finally. Because if you don't allow the laws to work in a democracy, it will be anarchist. I mean, what you have is nothing except a state of anarchy. Now, you have, the governors have listened, those who made the public announcement that they were going to ban open grazing. They have decided, okay, let us sit down and do the necessary things, put these laws in order and see to it that those laws are passed. As you said, some have done it. I have not read those laws. I just saw some excerpts of, but you see, unless you read a law from beginning to the end, including the interpretation sections of them, you may not be able to actually have a full opinion of what it is saying. However, a law is on ground. Others have not gone ahead to do it, as you rightly reported. What is the next line of action now? What should we expect? I shouldn't expect the federal government to react on behalf of the Mieti Allah. I would like the Métis Allah or the individuals involved, or those the association of Métis Allah in those particular states that are involved, to either decide, okay, look, these laws are hostile to us. Let us move out of this place and go to where the laws are accommodated. Otherwise, okay, we want to stay here, but we will not say that we will not obey this law. The law is already there. We will contest it. We hire lawyers or a lawyer, you know, as an association or to go and file a suit at the appropriate court within that jurisdiction to contest this law and say, okay, court, please look at this particular law that has just been signed into law by the government of the state. Look at it, give us the interpretation. Vis-a-vis our rights as citizens, which are contained here and there, whether it is the Constitution or other enactments of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and say, okay, look, these are state laws, and then there are higher laws, because in law there are hierarchies of law. The Constitution is overall above each and every other law within the country. And then after it, the laws of the National Assembly, and after it, the laws of the state. So if there is any conflict within, against those higher laws that this new laws that have been passed are conflicting with, then please interpret it. If within the states there is no justice for you, you take it up to Court of Appeal. If the Court of Appeal still does not give you justice, you take it to the Supreme Court, and then whatever the Supreme Court says, that will be the final thing. So I am happy. Nobody is picking up guns or cutlasses or anything to fight anybody else. The governors have spoken. Those who have not, maybe they may have just sat down to say, okay, look, we don't want to go to take this exercise, make this exercise in futility. Even if you pass this law, we are aware that if you knock it off against so and so, we will just waste our time and resources. So let's not just pass it and just wait and see. So some may be waiting to see how the others will be tested and how they will pass. But overall, it is very good.
I'll come back to the right of any groups or any individuals to contest any of these laws later on. But Prof, are you surprised that after the May 11 meeting and the pronouncements that followed, and then of course the July meeting that took place in Lagos, that some of these states have not complied with their own decision, the decisions of their governors to enact these laws? And there are a number of the states that have not done so at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wasn't surprised. You know, first let me use this opportunity once more to commend the Southern governors for taking a wonderful initiative to make that pronouncement, adopt that resolution. That resolution, to me, is quite courageous and patriotic. It's a welcome development because it is people-oriented. And now, the issue is that now, some states have not done that. Well, and a little correction, I think by last night, the Enugu state governor has signed into law that of Enugu State.
Well, that would be a new development, because I know that that bill was passed by the State House of Assembly yesterday.
Yes.
So maybe
I think I want to commend His Excellency, the Right Honorable Uguanyi, for doing that. Just as also he attended the meeting in Lagos where that decision was taken. So I commend him. I also learned that Imo State has such a law as far back as it's over 8 years now, but it's lying in the cooler. Although it is also worrisome by the media statement credited to the governor that he wasn't interested in any anti-grazing, open grazing law. Rather, he will go into a partnership with the herders. It's quite distant. So, but latest information available to me indicate that Imo State already has anti-open grazing law. So what remains is now for the implementation. Now, to the question you asked, you said whether I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, because it has actually shown that some of these political leaders are representing just their interest and the interest of their paid masters. Otherwise, why would a state executive headed by a governor refuse to send a bill to the state assembly to facilitate action on that? So it is worrisome. And so this is the enactment of this law is very, very important, because it will help to create a conducive environment for business. Because right now you are having conflicts here and there between the farmers and the herders. It's not helping us. It's actually returning us to the state of nature, where life was nasty, brutish, and solitary. And we are moving towards that is lawlessness. And this will not help any country. It will scare away even indigenous to invest, talk less of foreigners. And so I think that any state that hasn't done it, the executive of that state and the legislators do not know why they are in government. They are betrayers to their people, because it is a popular desire by a large section of Nigerians that this law should come into place in order to have peace. Now, you said about the statement credited to the leader of Mietiala. Well, for me, I don't take that as anything, because let the law be there first, and let any person violate the law. If the state doesn't implement it, then it's another thing, because what he said was preemptive and speculative. The law, many states hadn't even done it then. You're only trying to threaten them. Let the law be there in the first place, and now let's see who and who are ready to obey the law, and those who are ready to disobey the law. So the important thing is for the law to be there. So any southern state that hasn't come up with that law, that state, the executives, especially the governor of that state, should be held responsible by the people. And I'm sure the people are watching. And people are not going to take it lightly with any governor and the state assembly that failed to pass that law, because that law is a populist one. It is creative and it is patriotic. And so we expect the various state governors to send the bill to the state assembly, and for the state assembly, various state assembly, to facilitate the process of enacting the law. We want it in order to have peace. We want it for progress and for business to thrive. Because every day you hear of conflicts here and there. We don't want this conflict. We have to be a country governed by law and not by the whims and caprices of individuals. So any state that hasn't passed it, that the governor is anti-people. And I'm sure people will vote that person out in the next election.
That is if the governor is seeking re-election. But Barrister, let's come back to the fact of the fact that open grazing had always been with us for so many years, and it was conducted peacefully between the herders and the local communities. And then suddenly, it all changed. And the question that should be asked is, what really changed?
Okay.
Was it the practice or the people?
All right. Here in the north, where open grazing had been there for, I would say, a much longer time than it has been in the southern part of Nigeria, the northern people will tell you that conflict with herders is not a strange thing. it has always been there. Farmer-herder conflict has always been a part of northern Nigerian story. Herdsmen will push their cattle into people's farms, and then people will react, and then there will be fights here and there. The history is there. Now, as more and more people harness property, I mean, when I say property, I mean landed property, appropriate it for themselves for one reason, or for exploitational reason or the other, private ownership of lands were expanded. And then as the ownership was expanding, the available land for this cattle to actually go in and graze were shrinking. The lands were shrinking. Now, you can imagine in the south, where the demography is very, very thick and dense, and there isn't much land, free land and open land for grazing, how easily you can have conflict, because anywhere you enter, it's like somebody has already owned it. So I think really that is what happened. The moment these people, the herdsmen pushed their cattle into other people's lands and this thing, everybody will react. If you were the owner of any property or landed property, and whether you have crops on it or not, you are likely to react, oh, okay, why are you trespassing? So I think it's not just because of maybe cultural maybe interplay or conflict. No, not really. It all has to do with property. Ownership, private ownership of property. These people think their property, their asset is the cattle that is fluid, is moving. And then another person has a static, fixed property. So the person who has that fluid property will think that, okay, we are used to land just being there for us. So anywhere else in Nigeria is there. Unknown to them that somewhere else is not where they are coming from. Then there's also people that, herdsmen that cross from across the border into Nigeria. Now you can imagine those people, they are coming maybe from more arid and desert area or less grassy places. So they don't care really what problem they are going to cause for the country. So they will just push their things into other people's lands. So the problem is both the shrinking of the lands for open grazing and then the influx from our porous borders of cattle that do not really belong to us. I think that's really what happened. Yeah.
Let me push that further. Lawmaking is a process.
Yeah.
And the states that have enacted the anti-grazing, open grazing laws right now have gone all the whole hog of the lawmaking, and then it being assented to by the governors of the various states before becoming law. Yeah. Now, the argument that Mietiala and to some extent Magban is making at this point is that there are critical stakeholders in every process, and that the critical stakeholders like them ought to have been consulted before these laws were made.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think it is fair for them to say that, because this process has been there. It started from giving notice for them to come forward. Anybody who wishes to stay within, maybe for example, Ondo State, to do open grazing, please come and register with us. There was that invitation, and they were not going forward. I mean, in my own opinion, that was when they would have dialogued. That was when they would have dialogued. They refused. In fact, they were just acting up because And the federal government was speaking for them. So they thought, well, we don't need these people. We don't need to sit down and dialogue. So the time had passed when they could sit down and dialogue. And then the governors had to do what they had to do. Protect their own people and see to it that there is peace and harmony within their own jurisdiction. And they went ahead to pass these laws. The time for dialogue has passed, unfortunately, because people were grandstanding and so on. Now is the time for us to see how these laws are being tested. And rather than for them to say, look, we are not going to obey, they should please test these laws. Go to the adjudicating authority and say, okay, look at this thing. What do you think vis-a-vis this and this and this? Nobody has to fight. And while they are there, they could get an injunction and say, okay, let there be no implementation of this law yet, okay, until this suit before this court is done with, is dispensed with. And I'm sure the court will grant that injunction for them to...
As an organization, for instance, like Magban or Mietiala, can they file a joint a suit to challenge or to contest these laws? Is it in each state?
Yes.
Or collectively?
No, it has to be in each part because the laws are different. You remember when they made that public open pronouncement, we said, no, they cannot just do this. I say, oh, because the Ondo State governor cannot make pronouncement for Enugu State, for example. So that is why right now, each state has to pass its own separate law, even though they had an agreement among themselves that all the southern states are going to have this type of law. So in each particular state, you have to, when you are filing such a suit, you have to show that you are actually operating there. You have locus. Otherwise, you cannot come from somewhere and say, okay, please come and, what is your interest there? You have to prove and show to the court that you have interest there, and then your interest is actually going to be violated by the terms of those, the provisions of those laws, and then court look at it. That's all.
Prof, Mietiala is saying, for instance, that a similar law banning open grazing was passed in Benue State a year or two back, and that in spite of that, there doesn't seem to have been any progress made. Peace, the herders and the farmers have not been able to live together peacefully in spite of that law. And that is on that basis that is saying that what the states in the southern part of Nigeria are doing now is dead on arrival.
Well, in the first place, the issue of consultation does not arise because passage of law has a process. You have the presentation to the House, maybe as an executive bill from the governor. Then you have first reading, you have second reading, you have third reading. So you have time for people who have interest, stakeholders, to come and make input. So law doesn't fall from from heaven. It has a process. So any person, any stakeholder, such as Mietiala, has wonderful time to make input. If they fail to do that, that is maybe what they want. So it wouldn't be said that they were not consulted. So there is a process in legislation. So that is what. Second, on the issue of years, it has been enacted in the Benue State, they have not been implementing. Well, I am not in Benue State, but I know I've listened to the state governor consistently. His Excellency Dr. Sam Otom, saying that they've done the thing and they are ready to defend that law. The only thing is that I've not heard that any person was arrested and then tried under the law. I don't know the reason. I don't live there. But the truth is this. If you make a law you should implement it. I think, well, in addition to what Barrister said, we know that you have land is becoming, is shrinking. Equally, the population is increasing. Nigeria is over 200 million now. But the truth is that I think the present federal government, the policy or body language of the presidency is actually making them to take that, the kind of stand they are taking. Because I haven't seen any person that has invited. It seems, first of all, when the governors made that statement, you see that immediately they passed that resolution. The Attorney General and Minister of Justice reacted. Then Shehu Garba also reacted even before the. So whatever the Mietiala is doing is based on the tacit support, the unpronounced policy of the federal government to do everything to scuttle anything about anti-open grazing, and it is not good for democracy. I think they are drawing there. After all, as he rightly pointed out, the pastorals have been in Nigeria, but I think it is under this present regime that the conflicts have escalated. The conflicts have escalated simply because of the body language of the presidency, giving tacit support to them, and they talk anyhow. And I also think that is why no person has been arrested. But I don't want to blame the presidency for not arresting any person. Let a state that has made this law try to implement it, and let's see how presidency comes in and interfere. We now know that, well, it's the presidency. So even now, you cannot say it's the presidency. Let the state that makes, if a state makes a law, let that state implement it. Arrest those who flout the law. Prosecute them under the law. And let's see people who would say that, provided you follow the due process, do that, and let's see whether. So we can't even accuse the presidency. Despite the fact that through the body language of the presidency, they seem to support that. But even at that, if you go to court, the judge will say, according to the facts before me. So let people who have enacted this thing arrest all those who breach this very law. And let's see who will come and query them for doing that. So long, for now, there's no issue. So people, states that have enacted this, and let them begin the implementation. It is in the interest of every person, including the Mietiala, because every person is talking about ranching. Research has shown that cattle brought under, that reared under ranching, it has more nutrition than the one that, this one that cover the thousands of kilometers. The nutrients in them are less. So research has shown, equally, ranching will help them to diversify the issue of pastoral. Because it's not just to rear cattle. You have to get other byproducts from cattle. And this is what we're asking.
Okay.
They will make more money from that.
All right, Prof. Well, we'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at enforcement of these laws. How these states can enforce these laws, and whether or not the agencies of government that are seized with law enforcement can actually rise up to the occasion. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. We are still making efforts to get across to Barrister Shola Abisheni, who is the Secretary General of Afenifere, a socio-cultural group, and a former commissioner in Ondo State. We hope that network will permit us to reach him and to get his views. But back here in the studio, Barrister Mewada, the issue of enforcement is very critical. The laws have been made.
Yes.
Or at least in those states where they have been signed into law, the bills have been signed into law. Now it's implementation time. Yeah. How does a state government go about implementing a law such as this one when the law enforcement officers are essentially the police. And as we know today, the police is a federal agency.
Wow, this is, I don't know, WAEC or JAM question. However, let me recall what I learned in school. What will I say now? The art, or is it the science of lawmaking, requires that before you even make any law, you have to think of how to implement it. That is the reason why the law cannot make legislation, for instance, regarding what you do in your house as a private this and that. The law, for example, now, what you are thinking, there is no thought crime in law. Because even if you are thinking evil, there's no way the law can get to know or implement or to stop you from thinking that kind of a thought. The law evolved, for example, in Britain, where we adopted our own legal system, to such a point where it was decided that there are some boundaries, private dealings that the law shouldn't even be interested in. What you are doing on your own, okay, you have the right to your association, you know how you deal, who you argue, you make as your friend, even if it's so now let us stretch it to this particular incident. Before any legislator begin to say, oh yes, okay, let us go ahead and implement, and pass this law, they should have sat down with themselves to say, okay, how do we implement it? I would assume those who actually went the whole hog should have done that. Now, they are the ones to tell us that, okay, this is how we intend to implement it. I cannot really put myself in their head and say, oh, this is how. But I would assume that since there is a commissioner of police in that particular jurisdiction, or in those particular jurisdictions, the commissioner of police should be informed, or he should be communicated that there is an existing law now. The existing law is this and this and this and this, okay? And we would expect that you would help us implement this. There is in process a law, what we call an order of mandamus. When somebody has the constitution or the legal power, he's been empowered by a law, an existing law, to do something, and he refuses to do it, you can take him to court and ask the court to mandate him to do that particular thing. And if he doesn't do it, then there is another process of disobeying that law. So I think they should test everything. Just give, it is their will now that will determine. The federal government will not be there in court to say, oh, court, we don't want you to sentence this commissioner of police for not carrying out this law. They will not be there. And even if it is an indictment, then you know what to do next. Okay, let's assume that at the state level, the court says, okay, we are ordering you to do it, and he refuses to do that. What do you do? I think the legislators should have thought of, okay, this is what we maybe there's a process that they will work with their senators, or they work with their higher hierarchy of lawmakers, whatever, to see to it that the federal government, there are pressures that you can put on the federal government as a southern states, a committee of southern states, that you can put on the federal government to get what you want done.
I need to ask this question. Is it mandatory for a police commissioner, for instance, to enforce a state law?
Yes. The codes are there. In the north, the penal codes are there, okay? And the Police Act is also there. It's giving them, the police, the power, you know, to make arrests. For example, whether when they are suspecting, they are observing a crime being committed, for example, or there is a reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed, or there is a petition. For example, now that something is being done, they have to act. It's mandatory that they should act. So let them actually put all those necessary things together, gather their evidence, and then carry it on.
Prof, what are your expectations? How do you expect the states that have passed this law to enforce that law, to implement that law? What instrumentalities are open to them? What options are open to them to ensure that there is implementation of the laws that are passed?
Well, as a matter of fact, we know, as you rightly pointed out, that the police is a federal agency responsible to the federal government. But the governor is the chief executive, chief security officer in the state. And to that extent, the commissioner of police is under him. Now, after making this legislation, I expect that they should communicate to the society, publish the law, let people know. Though we agree that ignorance is not an excuse under the law. But having said that, as they pass this bill into law, let them communicate to the state, every member of the society. As from today, if you do this, it's a breach of law. Now, if any person breaches it, arrest the person. Apart from the police, there are other agencies. And apart from other formal agencies, we have the state arrangement now. For example, in the Southwest, you have Amatekun that collaborates with the police. Even in the Southeast and other places, you have them. Even if the police men refuse to arrest, let these people arrest and give to them. And let's see the action they will take until you have an issue. But to the best of my knowledge, it won't say that the federal government has refused to do the implementation. Let a governor give directive to the state police commissioner and let that person refuse. There are other ways of handling it. First, let the world know. And then let them follow the legal process as he has pointed out. And get it addressed. That's why it's a law. It has a process. So for now, the implementation wouldn't be a problem. Let them start. Any person. And this law is not targeted against any person. It's for the good of the state. So let them communicate the state. Let every person know that it's now an offense to, carry your cattle in the open and other things.
You just talked about communication and enlightenment now, which is one of the arguments that Mietiala and McBahn has always pushed, that there was need for more consultations and possibly enlightenment before the passage of this law.
No, you see, that is different thing. You are talking of consultation and communication. The law has stages. It has a process. And so I believe there are stages where the Mietiala, if they wanted to make an input, will make, just like other associations in the society. There are stages, especially after the first reading. After the first reading, no debate takes on. Time is given. They go back to review the thing, and then at the second reading, and there's a time they usually invite the public to come and make input. That is the time the consultation, stakeholders should, it's just like a policy, it has a process. So after that, when the law has been enacted, let the state be communicated. It's different from consultation. Let them communicate. Let them also know that it's now an offense to do so and so. If possible, these are the consequences of breaching such a law. And now, if any person violates this, arrest the person or implement the law. I don't want to say the arrest because I don't know the details of what the law says. But implement the law. Now, if there is any interference from the federal, let's know. And let Nigerians know. Yeah. So far, I haven't seen any. Yeah. So it's not even right to accuse the federal government. Let the states be courageous enough to implement the laws they have made. Absolutely. That is the issue.
Absolutely.
Let them implement the laws.
Yeah. Regarding this issue of consultation, my own advice, if Mieti Allah is listening, please let their lawyers get these laws, study them, and then sit down and have meetings with the various stakeholders within the Mieti Allah. Spread this information. Instead of you to be recalcitrant and cause issues, you know, for the country, cause issues for innocent Nigerians to suffer, slaughter, and so on and so forth due to conflict. Please help this country, help the peace and unity and coexistence of this country. Study these laws. Advise your people. Okay, see, this and this and this and this are what the laws are saying. If you do like this, you are breaching the law. If you do this otherwise, you are not breaching the law. So, however, there are other options. You can move northwards. Like I said at the last time that we met, if you think you are not really going to obey, rather than for you to stay and become a nuisance to yourself and to others, please leave. Go to other places where you are welcome, where there are no such restrictions for you. But if you want to stay there, then contest it through the due process of the law. No conflict, no fighting should be allowed. If anybody picks up a gun or whatever, begins to fight, Mieti Allah should be, the individual should be held responsible. And possibly the individual should blame Mieti Allah for not actually giving him the information that he requires. I think as an organization, Mieti Allah should live up to that responsibility of alerting their people, giving them the information, breaking it down to their level so that they would understand what is on ground.
One of the demands that Mieti Allah and Magban has made is that in states where these laws have been made now, there should be, or there must be, I think that's what it said, the establishment of ranches before this implementation can effectively take off. Implementation of these laws can take off. They are insisting that, look, if you do not want us to graze our cattle openly, set up ranches for us, and then this law can become implementable.
Such a language should not be used in a civil society. People own the land. There's no free land. If I own land, you have your own, and I'm cultivating there, you say a government should come and take my land and they establish ranches for you. No, it is not right. I don't think they are properly advised.
Okay.
Ranching is a private business.
In addition, sir.
Ranching is a private business.
Quickly, in addition, sir.
Yes.
Mieti Allah should pool their resources together and own those ranches if they want.
They buy land and start up
Government
ranches.
doesn't have to do it for them. This is a private business. It's a private enterprise. It has nothing to do with government. It's not a government venture. In fact, Nigerian government is divesting itself from businesses.
Government has privatized it.
So why should they be involved in ranching?
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We must go now. I wish we had a lot more time. There are a lot more issues to be thrown up. Whether all of these has anything to do with the politics of 2023 or not, but that's a matter for another day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Professor Charles Nwekaku teaches administration at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi, and Barrister Ahmed Mewada, who is an Abuja-based legal practitioner and president of the National Association of Nigerian Authors. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
Well, we're unable to eventually link up with Barrister Shola Ebisheni, unfortunately. We hope that next time he will be able to join us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. And for you, our viewers, I want to thank you for investing your time with us on the program today. And until we bring you a new edition, please stay blessed.